You know, it is, it's probably one of the most universally frustrating experiences of modern life.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you are staring at a file right there on your computer desktop. You know exactly what it is. You know exactly what is inside it.
Right, you probably made the file.
Exactly. You actually created the file yourself. But when you double-click on it, the system just, it just spins.
You get that little hourglass. Or the spinning beach ball of death.
The beach ball of death, yes. It completely refuses to open.
Right, and the data is entirely intact. It's just sitting there on the hard drive, but it is completely inaccessible to you in that exact moment. The operating system has essentially locked you out of your own creation.
Which is incredibly annoying when it's like just a PDF for a meeting.
Right.
But imagine if that file isn't on your computer at all. Imagine if that file is inside your own brain.
Oh, that's a terrifying thought.
It really is. And imagine the data you are trying to access is your ability to speak a language that you have spent years, maybe even decades mastering, and the system just crashes right in the middle of a high-stakes conversation.
It is a profoundly terrifying feeling.
Yeah.
You are literally looking at the words in the architecture of your mind, but the biological system simply won't let you open them. I mean, you are locked out of your own intellect.
So if you are actively mastering English, or maybe you're navigating a multilingual workplace, or, you're just insanely curious about how the human brain processes stress and communication, this deep dive is absolutely for you.
It's going to be a good one.
We are pulling apart a truly fascinating framework today. It was originally designed to help non-native English speakers break through this exact phenomenon, which they call the dreaded language freeze.
A language freeze, yeah.
We're going to look at the hidden neuroscience and the psychology behind why incredibly competent, highly intelligent people suddenly lose their ability to speak a non-native language the absolute second they're put under pressure.
And, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the core myth we have to completely demolish right out of the gate.
Let's demolish it.
Is the idea that confidence in a second language comes from achieving perfect fluency.
Which is what literally everyone is taught, right?
We are entirely conditioned to believe that. That fluency is the prerequisite for confidence. Like, if you just grind through enough vocabulary flashcards, or if you eliminate every single trace of your accent.
Right. If you perfectly conjugate every irregular verb.
Exactly. Then, and only then, you will magically be granted the feeling of confidence.
But the sources we are looking at today prove it is the exact opposite.
Completely the opposite.
Confidence does not come from fluency.
Yep.
Confidence actually enables fluency. The fluency is already there. It's just, trapped behind a wall.
What's fascinating here is that when you experience this communicative block, it isn't actually a language problem at all.
Right.
We really need to stop treating it like a linguistic deficit. It is fundamentally a nervous system failure. You haven't forgotten your English. Your biological hardware has just temporarily shut down your access to it as a protective measure.
It's biological. And that changes everything. Because once you understand that it's really just plumbing and hardware, you can fix it.
You absolutely can.
So our mission today is to unpack the raw biology of this freeze response, dismantle the heavy imposter syndrome that always gets attached to it, and equip you with a highly actionable, science-backed framework to completely rewire your conversational reflexes.
I love that.
But I want to start by really sitting with what this phenomenon actually feels like.
Yeah.
Because if you've been there, it is agonizing.
It's an intensely vulnerable state to be in.
It really is. Like, picture this. You are in a conversation. Everyone around you is speaking English. The vibe is good. Everything is perfectly fine.
You'll relax.
Exactly. You are following the conversation flawlessly. You understand the nuance. You are picking up on the cultural references. You're nodding along. You're absolutely not a beginner.
Right. Your comprehension is at like 99%.
Yes. Then the spotlight shifts. The room goes quiet. Someone turns directly to you and asks a pointed question.
There it is.
And in that split second, the words you possess just vanish. The desktop freezes.
It feels like the ultimate betrayal by your own brain.
It really does.
And to understand the mechanics of why this happens, like why the brain betrays you in that specific microsecond, we have to look closely at the anatomy of the freeze response.
The anatomy of it, yeah.
Biologically, when a non-native speaker is put on the spot in a high-stakes situation, the brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, just fires up.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because this is where the logic seems to fall apart for a lot of people.
Sure.
Rationally, we know it is just a conversation. You are sitting at a dinner party, or you're in a nice climate-controlled conference room holding a cup of coffee.
Nothing dangerous is actually happening.
Right. It is just a question about a project update, or maybe a movie. Why on earth does the amygdala read a friendly question from a colleague as a literal mortal threat?
Because the amygdala, while it's incredibly fast, is ancient and it is not particularly nuanced.
Okay.
It evolved primarily to keep us alive in a really harsh environment. To the primitive parts of our brain, social exposure and the potential for group rejection aren't just, uncomfortable. They carry immense evolutionary weight.
Because back in the day, rejection meant you were in big trouble.
Exactly. If we go back thousands of years, if you looked foolish, if you were deemed incompetent and subsequently rejected by your tribe, you were cast out into the wilderness.
And isolation meant certain death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So your amygdala interprets the spotlight of a high-stakes question, this sudden, intense social vulnerability, as a severe, life-threatening situation.
Right. So the brain isn't thinking, oh, I might miss a promotion. It's thinking, if I mess up this sentence, the tribe will leave me behind and I will literally starve.
Yes.
It's such an extreme overreaction. It makes
Yeah.
me think of how smartphones operate when the battery gets dangerously low.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
You know when it hits like 5% and it goes into that extreme battery saver mode?
That is a perfect analogy.
The phone immediately kills all the background apps, it dims the screen, it shuts off the Wi-Fi searching, it drops the high-definition graphic.
That does whatever it has to do.
Right, it restricts the phone to just the absolute bare minimum required to make an emergency phone call. It shuts down the luxury features to preserve the core system.
And complex language processing is a luxury feature.
Oh, wow.
When that alarm sounds in your brain, your autonomic nervous system initiates a standard threat response. Fight, flight, or freeze.
Right.
Now, obviously, you cannot physically fight an interviewer who just asked you about your 5-year plan.
I mean, you shouldn't.
Right. Probably a bad idea. And you cannot run out of the conference room and sprint down the street, so your nervous system defaults to the third option. You freeze.
You play dead.
It is the biological equivalent of an animal playing dead to avoid a predator.
And what blows my mind from reading the source material is that this isn't just a psychological metaphor. There is a literal physiological shift happening in the brain's plumbing.
It is entirely physiological. When the amygdala triggers the freeze, blood flow is literally redirected.
That is wild.
It moves rapidly away from the prefrontal cortex. Now, the prefrontal cortex is the highly evolved, sophisticated part of your brain responsible for executive function, complex language production, nuance, and accessing your deep, long-term memory banks.
So basically, it's the part of the brain where all your advanced English vocabulary is stored.
Precisely. And where does that blood go? It is redirected toward your extremities, your large muscle groups, and your basic survival systems.
So you can run away.
Exactly. Your brain is preparing your body to sprint away from danger or engage in hand-to-hand combat. It is literally shutting down the non-essential high-level systems. And unfortunately, forming a perfectly conjugated, sophisticated sentence is deemed completely non-essential when your biology thinks you are under attack.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this perfectly explains why the freeze feels entirely disproportionate to the actual situation.
It feels awful.
It feels like you are being asked to perform open-heart surgery in front of an audience because biologically your body is utterly convinced you are in mortal danger.
Yep.
And that state of extreme biological arousal distorts everything, doesn't it? It even distorts the perception of time.
Oh, time distortion is a massive factor here. When adrenaline hits the bloodstream, the brain starts processing information at an accelerated rate to survey the threat.
Okay.
Because your internal processing speed is running so fast, the external world appears to slow down.
Oh, the time distortion. There is
Sad.
this incredibly relatable, almost agonizingly funny anecdote from the source material about exactly this.
Oh, I know the one you mean.
Yeah, one of the individuals mentioned in the framework, a really fluent, highly knowledgeable, non-native speaker, was at a casual dinner party, and the conversation turned to music, which is a topic this person absolutely loves and has deep, complex opinions about. So someone casually turns to them and asks, who do you think is the most underrated musician alive right now?
Which is a fantastic question. And crucially, it's a question they actually had a brilliant answer for.
Yes. They literally had a nuanced, specific response forming in their head. They were ready to talk about, a specific jazz artist, the cultural impact, the instrumentation.
I had the data ready.
But then the spotlight hit, the amygdala fired, the prefrontal cortex powered down, and they panicked. And instead of their brilliant textured answer, what blurted out of their mouth was, The music of today is sometimes not as good as the music of before.
There's a
The
before.
music of before. I had to put the text on when I read that because I was laughing so hard, but also wincing in sympathy.
It is so painful.
It's just negative space wearing the costume of a sentence. It means absolutely nothing. It is a completely hollow collection of basic words.
It is hollow, but we really have to look at why they blurted that specific sentence out.
Why that sentence?
It comes directly back to the time distortion under stress we were just discussing. Under normal, relaxed circumstances, if someone asks you a deep question, a 7-second pause while you gather your thoughts is absolutely nothing.
Right, it just looks like you're thinking.
It's a sign of active listening. But when your amygdala is firing and your heart rate is spiking, a 7-second pause feels like 4 minutes of agonizing, humiliating silence.
Because of the adrenaline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The subjective experience of that silence is crushing.
Because your brain is screaming, they are staring at you, the tribe is judging you, you are failing.
Exactly. The internal pressure to simply end that silence becomes so overwhelming that your brain bypasses the locked prefrontal cortex and frantically grabs whatever is left in the shallowest, most primitive puddle of vocabulary available.
Just to end it.
He constructs a first-grade sentence just to make the excruciating silence stop.
So you throw out a garbage sentence just to escape the spotlight. But of course, as the sources detail, throwing out the music of before just creates a brand new problem. Because now you hear yourself saying something incredibly simplistic, which makes you feel foolish, which triggers more stress. This is what the framework refers to as the cascade.
Yes, the cascade effect is arguably the most destructive part of this entire phenomenon.
How so?
It is a vicious, self-perpetuating chain reaction of failures.
Right.
It starts with that biological blank mind, the extreme battery saver mode.
Right.
Then comes the immediate cognitive panic about being blank. That panic triggers an aggressive psychological defense mechanism, which is hypermonitoring.
Hypermonitoring.
Yes. Suddenly, you become acutely, painfully aware of every single syllable you are trying to produce.
And because you are hypermonitoring, your speech becomes choppy and hesitant.
Right.
Which leads to intense embarrassment.
Exactly. Which signals to the amygdala that, yes, there is a massive social threat happening right now.
Which dumps more adrenaline.
Which restarts the entire loop. You are essentially trapped in a biological feedback loop of your own making.
That sounds exhausting.
It really is. To truly understand the mechanics of this hypermonitoring phase, we have to look at the linguistic theory underpinning the framework.
Okay.
Specifically, the work of Stephen Krashen, a highly influential linguist. He proposed something called the monitor hypothesis.
The monitor hypothesis.
Basically, his theory explains that as adults learn a second language, we develop an internal editor, a vigilant verbal spell checker.
Got it.
Its primary job is to filter and correct every sentence for grammatical errors before it ever leaves our mouths.
I struggle with this, though.
Tell me why.
Because we spend years in school being graded specifically on our grammar, red ink on every test. It feels deeply counterintuitive to look at a verbal spell checker as a bad thing.
I hear that all the time.
If I am speaking a second language in a professional setting, shouldn't I want to be as accurate as possible? Doesn't turning off the spell checker risk making me sound uneducated?
It's a very fair question, and it's the exact trap most learners fall into. To answer it, we have to separate written language from spoken language.
Okay, let's separate them.
In writing, absolutely, a spell checker is fantastic. You have the luxury of time. You can draft, edit, and perfect. But human conversation happens in real time. The processing speed required for spoken dialogue is immense.
It's super fast.
Over-relying on the internal monitor during live speech is catastrophic for one specific reason: cognitive load.
It's too much RAM for the brain to process all at once.
Exactly. When your brain is already in a stress state, dealing with the amygdala hijack, that over-monitor goes into absolute overdrive.
It panics.
It doesn't just want to check the sentence. It insists on scrutinizing every single word for tense, agreement, and pronunciation before you are allowed to speak it.
Wow.
This heavy processing inserts tiny micropauses into your speech. It forces you to abandon complex, interesting thoughts mid-sentence because the grammatical structure feels too risky.
So you dumb it down.
It actively reduces your intellect to basic vocabulary just to satisfy the internal editor's demand for perfection.
Which brings us right back to the music of before. The speaker had a complex thought about jazz, but the monitor said, whoa, the vocabulary for that is too risky. We might make a mistake. Give me something safe.
And here is the crucial psychological insight that flips the whole script. Human listeners process fluency, rhythm, and flow long before they process grammatical accuracy.
Really?
Yes. If you are speaking with halting, over-monitored, micro-pausing perfection, the listener's brain does not register, wow, what flawless subject-verb agreement.
What does it register?
Their brain registers, this person is highly uncertain, hesitant, and perhaps lacks competence in their field.
Halting perfection is perceived as incompetence.
Exactly.
That is a massive, uncomfortable truth. You are sacrificing the perception of your own intelligence on the altar of grammatical perfection.
It's a bad trade-off.
And it gets even worse computationally when you add the mental translation trap on top of the monitor.
Oh, the mental translation trap is the nail in the coffin for fluency under pressure.
How does that work?
When the monitor is in overdrive and the prefrontal cortex is starved of blood, many non-native speakers revert to a highly inefficient crutch. They start conceptualizing their thoughts in their native language and then attempt to translate those thoughts into English in real time.
Which just doubles the cognitive load.
It more than doubles it. It's a massive computational bottleneck. You are constructing a thought, translating it word by word, running it through the grammar monitor, and then trying to articulate it.
That sounds impossible.
This extra processing step guarantees a severe loss of your true personality. It strips away all the warmth and nuance, and ironically, it makes you sound exactly like the stereotype of a struggling language learner that you are desperately trying to avoid.
We can actually see this entire cascade, the amygdala hijack, the time distortion, the hypermonitoring, and the translation trap happen in real time.
We have a perfect example.
The source framework provides a vivid case study that perfectly illustrates how this destroys high-stakes scenarios. Let's talk about Raphael.
Raphael's story is heartbreaking, but it is the perfect encapsulation of this entire phenomenon. It proves that this is a biological issue, not an intelligence issue.
So to paint the picture, Raphael is a highly experienced software engineer from Brazil. And we need to be explicitly clear about his baseline skills. His English was exceptional.
Top tier.
He scored in the top percentiles on the TOEFL exam. He consumed complex English media natively without subtitles. He lived and breathed the language. He was highly prepared.
The problem was not a lack of English.
Right. So he lands a massive interview with a major tech firm in San Francisco.
And it was a video interview. We shouldn't gloss over that specific environmental detail. Video calls add a unique, heavy layer of stress to the amygdala.
How so? Is it just the technology, like the fear of the internet dropping?
It's the psychological exposure. First, there is always a slight, unnatural audio delay, which disrupts the natural rhythm of human conversation.
Oh, yeah, that micro delay is the worst.
It really is.
Yeah.
But more importantly, you are constantly seeing your own face on the screen.
Mm.
The video feed acts as a digital mirror.
Right. You never have a real-life conversation holding a mirror up to your own face.
Exactly. Staring at your own face dramatically amplifies self-consciousness. It acts as an accelerant to the hyper-monitoring phase. You aren't just monitoring your words, you are monitoring your facial expressions, your posture, your perceived anxiety.
That is so true.
It maximizes the cognitive load before the first question is even asked.
It's like turning a heat lamp directly onto that feeling of social exposure.
Exactly.
So Raphael is in this high-pressure video interview. The interviewer smiles and asks him a question he has literally practiced 40 times in the mirror. Tell me a little about yourself.
A standard, friendly, predictable question.
The most standard question.
But the stakes are sky high. He wants this job. The camera is staring at him. The amygdala fires. The extreme battery saver mode engages.
Total system shutdown. His mind goes entirely blank. He experiences that agonizing time distortion where a few seconds of silence feel like an eternity of failure.
Right.
And trapped in the cascade, heavily monitored by his internal spell checker, desperate to say something perfectly accurate, he delivers this robotic, meaningless line. I am a software engineer who likes to solve problems.
Now, let's analyze that sentence objectively. I am a software engineer who likes to solve problems. It is technically a flawless English sentence. The grammar is perfect.
But
for an experienced, specialized software engineer applying for a highly competitive senior role, it communicates absolutely zero value.
right, everyone in that field solves problems.
It's the professional equivalent of the music of before.
It tells them nothing about his unique skills, his passions, his specific expertise. And the tragic outcome of this is that he was rejected. The company actually gave him detailed feedback. They told him he aced the technical engineering parts of the interview, but they rejected him specifically because he, quote, struggled to articulate ideas clearly and confidently in English.
Which is a devastating piece of feedback to receive because Again, his English was excellent. His nervous system simply wouldn't let him access it.
That's awful.
But the psychological fallout for Raphael after that rejection was severe. And this brings us to a massive, silent epidemic for non-native speakers, imposter syndrome.
Let's really dive deep into that, because Raphael's immediate reaction wasn't to blame the interview format or his nerves. He immediately internalized the rejection.
He blamed himself.
Yes, he assumed his English was the core problem. He internalized it as a personal failure, a deficit in his own fundamental intelligence.
And he is not alone. The sources cite that the vast majority of international professionals suffer from this specific potent flavor of imposter syndrome.
It's so common.
It's a profound identity crisis. Think about it from a psychological standpoint. In your native language, you are a fully formed, three-dimensional human being. You are textured, you are funny, you possess nuance, you have a specific warmth, a sharp wit, and a complex worldview.
You know exactly who you are when you speak Portuguese or Mandarin or Spanish.
Yes. But when you are trapped in the freeze response, heavily monitored in a second language, all of that texture is violently stripped away.
The color is gone.
The nuance vanishes. The humor dies. You are left feeling completely disconnected from your own intellect. You feel reduced to a rough draft of yourself.
A rough draft of yourself. That is such a painful, incredibly accurate way to describe the emotional weight of this.
It really hits home.
It's like, you are a high-definition 4K movie, but to the rest of the world, you are being broadcast in pixelated, buffering standard definition, and you can't show them the real you.
And the natural human instinct when you feel like a pixelated imposter is twofold, and both are destructive.
What are they?
The first instinct is to hide. You stay quiet in meetings. You avoid speaking up with ideas. You shrink your presence to avoid exposure.
And the second?
The second instinct is to obsessively try to fix the perceived problem by studying more grammar lists, buying more vocabulary books, and grinding harder.
Which is exactly what we said not to do.
Right? Which, as we now know, only strengthens the internal overmonitor, adds more pressure, and actively makes the freeze response worse.
It's a tragic irony. The harder you study the rules, the harder it is to speak. But Raphael did something brilliant. He broke the cycle.
He really did.
He had a fundamental paradigm shift. He stopped asking himself the destructive question, why isn't my English good enough? And he started asking a forensic question. Why did my English disappear in that specific moment?
That cognitive shift from self-criticism to genuine curiosity is profound. Because an investigation finds answers, whereas self-criticism only finds shame.
Oh, that's good.
By asking why it disappeared, he began to realize his language didn't fail at all. His body's physiological stress response had overwhelmed his cognitive access.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? It means the solution isn't memorizing another massive flashcard deck of advanced business idioms.
Definitely not.
The solution is nervous system regulation. The solution is hacking the biology. But before we get to the actual tools to regulate that system, the framework takes a fascinating detour.
It does.
It insists we look closely at the exact language, the metaphors we use to describe this psychological state.
This is a crucial, often overlooked step in cognitive behavioral approaches, the lexicon of the freeze.
The words we use.
Right. Naming the experience accurately is the very first step to disarming it. When you have clinical, descriptive, non-judgmental words for what you are feeling, it stops being a moral failing.
It stops being, I'm not smart enough.
Exactly. It stops being, I am stupid, and becomes, my system is experiencing a mechanical issue, which is something you can actually fix.
It reminds me of how linguists talk about metaphors shaping our reality. If we use violent or self-deprecating words, we feel defeated. Let's break down some of these metaphors of the mind from the framework.
Let's do it.
The first one is a phrase everyone uses, go blank. We say it casually, but the implication of the word blank is really important.
Yes. Going blank implies a temporary interruption. It's like a power cut in a building. The furniture is still in the room. The data hasn't been deleted from the hard drive.
Right.
The lights are just off for a second. It completely removes the panic of, I have permanently forgotten my vocabulary.
Yeah.
It frames the problem as a temporary access issue.
Then there is this phrase, which I found so evocative, trapped in a sentence.
Oh, I love that one. That perfectly describes the psychological prison of real-time speech.
Oh, so?
Well, you start a sentence with confidence, you get halfway through, and suddenly you realize you do not possess the exact vocabulary to finish it the way you originally intended.
We've all been there.
But you can't rewind time. You can't hit backspace in a spoken conversation. So you are trapped. You are forced to contort the sentence, perform a lesser, clumsier version of your thought, just to reach a grammatical period and escape.
It's an awful feeling. You hear yourself derailing, but you can't jump off the train. Then there is second guessing.
Right.
We touched on this, but this is the core action of the overmonitor. You have a first instinct, your gut response. And in language acquisition, your gut is usually implicitly trained and linguistically natural. It's usually correct.
Yes, it is.
But you doubt it. You second guess the instinct, you run it through the harsh spell checker, and you replace a natural phrase with something clunky and overly formal.
And we also talk about the brain going offline. Again, returning to that beautiful technological metaphor. It treats the brain's failure as an involuntary technical disconnection.
It takes the guilt out of it.
It is entirely devoid of moral judgment. If your Wi-Fi router goes offline, you don't yell at it for being morally weak or stupid. You don't question its fundamental worth.
You just unplug it and plug it back in.
You just calmly reset the router. Applying that same grace to your own brain is incredibly regulating for the nervous system.
And finally, the phrase being put on the spot. This perfectly captures the sensation that the social spotlight is not just bright, it is physically hot. It is a heat lamp.
That's a great image.
It highlights the sudden exposure and the intense social pressure that triggers the amygdala in the very first place.
By naming these experiences, by giving them distinct boundaries, we stop fighting a vague monster of bad English and start addressing specific biological and cognitive events.
Okay, so we've named the monster, we understand the biology of the amygdala, we see how the cascade destroys fluency. Now the million-dollar question, how do we practically apply this neuroscience?
The toolkit.
Exactly. How do we stop the freeze? The Source framework provides a 5-step toolkit designed specifically for rewiring your conversational reflexes.
This is where we move from deep theory into highly actionable practice. And the first technique is the foundation of everything else. It's called the communication first switch.
This is entirely about consciously deactivating that destructive overmonitor we spent so much time on.
Right.
It's a preemptive mental shift you make before you even open your mouth. You deliberately change your internal KPI, your core goal.
Your objective changes.
The goal is no longer speak perfectly grammatical English. The goal is simply make sure the human being across from me understands my core meaning.
By making that conscious, explicit switch in your mind, you are immediately providing profound relief to the prefrontal cortex.
Like taking a weight off.
When your brain is no longer tasked with running a flawless, computationally heavy grammatical spell check on every single syllable, a massive amount of cognitive RAM is suddenly freed up.
So what happens to that RAM?
You can redirect all that liberated energy toward actual thought expression, vocal tonality, and reading the room. You essentially give yourself explicit permission to be slightly messy as long as the signal gets through the noise.
Right, because as we established earlier, a messy, highly fluent, passionate message is always received better and deemed more competent than a perfectly grammatical, agonizingly slow silence.
100%.
Okay, technique number 2 is fascinating because it tackles the time distortion head on. It's called the 3-second permission.
We saw Raphael's interview fail largely because of a 7-second silence that he allowed to turn into a biological panic.
Right.
The 3-second permission is about taking control of that silence. It is the practice of deliberately narrating the pause instead of suffering through dead air.
You literally give the pause language. Instead of freezing like a deer in headlights, you say something out loud like, let me think about that for a second, or that's a really layered question. I want to give you a proper answer on this one.
From a psychological and biological standpoint, this is an incredibly powerful maneuver.
Why is it so powerful?
First, socially, it signals thoughtfulness and intellect to the listener, not confusion. You aren't freezing, you are pondering. It reframes the silence as a choice.
You own the silence.
Exactly. Second, and vastly more importantly for your biology, narrating the pause buys your amygdala precious time.
How so? It's just a few words. Like, how does that help the amygdala?
It takes a few seconds for the autonomic nervous system to scan the environment and realize, oh, wait, we are not being eaten by a tiger. The person across the table is just nodding and waiting patiently.
Wow.
By filling the dead air with a rehearsed placeholder, you prevent the panic cascade from starting. The perceived threat level drops, the blood flows back to the prefrontal cortex, the extreme battery saver turns off, and your complex language comes back online.
I love the mechanics of that, but I have to push back here because I can see a trap with this one.
What's the trap?
If I'm in a fast-paced 20-minute project update meeting and I say, let me think about that deeply, to every single rapid-fire question, I'm going to start sounding evasive. Or worse, I'll sound like I'm stalling because I genuinely don't know my job. Can you overuse this?
That is a very astute point, and the framework explicitly agrees with you. It absolutely cannot become a verbal panic.
Okay, good.
If you use it for basic informational questions, it destroys your credibility. The 3-second permission must be reserved for genuine moments of needed processing, or for the specific, high-stakes, open-ended questions that you internally feel might trigger the cascade.
So use it sparingly.
It is an emergency handbrake to stop a crash. It is not the gas pedal for everyday driving.
That makes perfect sense. Keep it in the glass box and brake only in case of emergency. Okay, technique number 3 moves us into preparation. It's called the clarity anchor.
The clarity anchor.
This is a tool you build before the high-stakes conversation ever happens. You anticipate the likely topics, and you pre-write a single, unshakable sentence.
The constraints here are what make it work. Notice it is a single sentence. It is not a paragraph. It is not a memorized script.
Why not a script?
Scripts are dangerous because if you forget word number 4, the whole paragraph collapses.
That's true.
An anchor is just one core truth, polished and ready. For example, if you know you will be asked about your management style in an interview, your anchor might be, my core strength is making complex systems feel simple for my team.
The psychological utility of this is brilliant once you understand the cascade. When you are in the room and you feel the cascade starting, when the heat lamp turns on, your heart rate spikes and the mind starts going blank, you don't have to panic about inventing a brilliant opening sentence.
You already have it.
You just reach into your pocket and deploy the anchor you already built. And because starting the physical act of speaking is 90% of the battle, once that anchor is spoken aloud, the freeze shatters.
Exactly.
The freeze simply cannot survive the momentum of the first successful sentence.
Once your own auditory system hears your own voice successfully producing a competent, fluent English sentence, it acts as a massive biological reassurance.
It calms you down.
The panic subsides, the system unlocks, and your natural fluency can take over to expand on the anchor for the rest of your answer. It is a wedge to hold the door open so your intellect can walk through.
It's beautifully mechanical. Now, technique number 4 is definitely the most intimidating one on the list.
It takes some bravery, for sure.
It's a bit more intensive, but the data behind it is wild. It's the record and release method. This is a specific 7-day protocol.
Right.
The instructions are, you set up your phone, you speak unscripted on video for 2 to 3 minutes about any topic, your weekend, a movie, your job, whatever. Then you watch it back.
Here comes the hard part.
But the absolute golden rule is you must watch it without judgment. You watch it like a scientist. You note exactly one good thing you did and one specific mechanical thing to improve.
The requirement to perform this observation without judgment is incredibly difficult, but absolutely vital. And to understand why it's so difficult, we have to look at the physics and psychology of a phenomenon called voice confrontation.
Yes. Let's talk about why literally everyone inherently hates the sound of their own voice on a recording.
It's pure physics. When you speak normally, you are hearing your voice through 2 different pathways. You hear the sound waves traveling through the air into your ear, but you are also hearing the internal vibrations of your vocal cords traveling through the solid bone of your skull.
Wow.
Bone is much denser than air, so it conducts lower frequencies much better. Therefore, the voice you hear inside your head is deeper, richer, and more resonant.
It has a nice warm bass to it.
Precisely. But when you hear an external audio recording of yourself, you are only hearing the air conduction. The bone resonance is gone.
Oh, okay.
So to your brain, this recorded voice sounds shockingly foreign, higher pitched, thinner, and usually we instinctively recoil from it. Our first reaction is almost universally negative and highly self-critical. We feel exposed.
Oh, totally. Hearing my own voice on a recording still makes me want to apologize to everyone I've ever spoken to in my life. It's a deeply uncomfortable mirror.
So the practice of the release in this method is training your brain to override that biological cringe.
How do you do that?
You are training yourself to observe your own communication objectively, divorcing your self-worth from the recording. You look at it and say, okay, my eye contact dropped here, or I overuse the word basically.
So you separate your identity from it.
It transforms a terrifying emotional performance review into calm, objective data collection. And the sources provide incredibly compelling data on the efficacy of this. 29 out of 30 participants who committed to the 7-day protocol saw measurable, noticeable fluency gains.
But the text is very specific that it has to be video, right? You can't just use a voice memo app.
Yes, the visual feedback loop is critical. When you freeze or when you feel unconfident in a second language, your body language almost always reflects that internal state.
You shrink.
You physically shrink. You break eye contact, you look down, you hunch your shoulders to protect your vital organs. It's an evolutionary submissive posture. Seeing that physical collapse on video allows you to consciously correct your posture in the future.
And this ties right back into the nervous system regulation.
Exactly. The mind-body connection is a two-way street. If you feel confident, you sit up straight. But conversely, if you force yourself to sit up straight, expand your chest, and maintain eye contact with the camera, your physical body sends a biological safety signal back up the vagus nerve to your brain.
Wow.
It tells the amygdala, we are taking up space, we are not hiding, we are safe. This physically de-escalates the threat response.
Mind and body working together to hack the system. That is brilliant. Okay, the final technique, number 5, is perhaps the most paradigm shifting. It's called the non-native advantage.
This section of the framework raises a deeply important, almost philosophical question. Is being a non-native speaker actually a disadvantage in the modern global landscape? Because the entire imposter syndrome is built on the assumption that it is.
The statistics on this completely shattered my worldview. They absolutely blew my mind. When you look at the raw data, there are 1.14 billion second language English speakers in the world right now,
Think about that number.
compared to only 390 million native speakers. That means 96% of all global English conversations currently happening involve at least one non-native speaker.
Those numbers are staggering, and they completely reframe the narrative. If you are a non-native speaker, you are not a deficient, struggling exception trying to awkwardly fit into a native speaker's pristine world.
You're not the odd one out.
Statistically speaking, the non-native speaker is the global norm. The standard operating procedure for global business is a room full of people with varying accents, different grammatical structures, and distinct vocabularies, collaboratively finding a way to communicate.
The idea of perfect native-level fluency as the ultimate baseline is a statistical myth. But, and this is important, we do have to tackle accent bias. The sources don't sugarcoat this, and we shouldn't either. They discuss the credibility deficit.
It's a real issue.
This is a real, measurable, unfair sociological bias where native listeners unconsciously judge people with accents as less intelligent or less credible.
It is an unfair, deeply ingrained reality of human sociology. People associate familiar sounds with safety and competence. However, the framework provides a crucial piece of leverage here.
What's the leverage?
The data clearly shows that while accent bias exists, extreme confidence and vocal clarity act as an attenuator. They severely weaken the bias.
How does that work in practice? Like, how does confidence beat bias?
If you speak clearly, project your voice, hold eye contact, and fundamentally say it like you mean it, the listener's brain is forced into a corner.
Okay.
It has to process your strong, dominant delivery, which overrides the primitive accent bias. The listener's brain deprioritizes the accent processing and engages deeply with the actual content of your message.
That is fascinating.
You cannot magically erase your accent overnight, but you can project so much conviction and physical presence that the accent becomes entirely secondary, an afterthought to your competence.
And the sources point out an actual hidden superpower that non-native speakers possess: metacognitive awareness.
This is a beautiful advantage.
What does that actually mean?
Well, native speakers acquire language implicitly as children. They just absorb it. They know a sentence sounds wrong, but they usually cannot tell you why it's wrong grammatically. They rely purely on blind instinct.
Right.
But a non-native speaker had to learn the architecture of the language explicitly as an adult. They know the names of the tenses, they understand the mechanics.
Right. A non-native speaker can actually diagram a sentence, whereas I just say, well, that sounds weird.
Exactly. Because you have this metacognitive awareness of the rules, you actually possess the ability to construct arguments, analyze rhetoric, and deploy language with the deliberate, surgical precision that native speakers often lack.
You have the blueprints.
You aren't operating on gut instinct. You are operating an instrument you fully understand. It is a profound professional advantage if you stop comparing yourself to the false, sloppy standard of native ease and start deeply valuing your own deliberate effectiveness.
Okay, so we have traversed a massive amount of ground here. We understand the biological threat of the amygdala, we know how the internal monitor creates the cascade, and we have a 5-step toolkit to deactivate the freeze.
We covered a lot.
Now, what does this actually sound like in the real world? When we swap out fearful, over-monitored, submissive language for confident, anchored communication-first language, how does the dialogue change?
Let's look at some examples.
Let's move from theory into practice and look at some basic versus better framing from the text.
This is where we see the psychology and the sociology applied in real-time conversations.
We're going to walk through 4 specific dialogue shifts from the framework and analyze exactly why the better version works psychologically, biologically, and socially.
That sounds good.
Let's take scenario 1, the disagreement. You are in a cross-functional meeting, someone proposes a strategy, and you know it's flawed. You need to push back.
Right, high tension.
The basic version, driven by anxiety, the internal monitor, and the desire to be socially safe is, I'm sorry, but I think maybe.
We hear this formulation every single day in corporate environments.
Constantly. But the better version, utilizing the framework, is, I want to offer a different take on this because I think there's something we might be missing.
Let's analyze the deep psychological shift here. The basic version starts with a pre-apology. I'm sorry, bud.
Yeah, you're saying sorry for having an idea.
You are literally apologizing for your very existence in the conversation before you even articulate your idea. You are signaling submissiveness. It instantly lowers your social status in the room and unconsciously undermines the validity of your idea before it's heard.
That's rough.
The better version, I want to offer a different take, removes the apology entirely. It frames the disagreement not as a hostile conflict, but as an additive, valuable collaboration.
It's much more positive.
And the phrase, something we might be missing, unites you with the team. It's an invitation to look at a blind spot together, rather than an attack.
It's so much stronger, and it takes the exact same level of English vocabulary.
Exactly.
Scenario 2 is the clarification. The speaker's talking way too fast, they use an idiom you don't know, and you didn't catch the meaning. The basic, panicked version is simply, I don't understand.
Saying, I don't understand, is a complete declaration of personal deficit. It places the entire burden of the communication failure squarely on your own shoulders. It makes you the problem.
Ouch.
The better version is, I want to make sure I caught it right.
Which feels entirely different.
It shifts the power dynamic completely. I want to make sure I caught it right. Does not say, I am failing to comprehend your brilliance.
What does it say?
It says, I am a high-level professional who is deeply committed to precision and accuracy in this project, so please repeat your point so I can process it perfectly. It flatters their point while demanding clarity.
Right. It makes you look incredibly thorough and engaged, not confused. Let's look at scenario 3, the career goal. You are in that high-stakes interview, and they ask the classic, where do you want to be in 5 years?
The dreaded question.
The basic, highly monitored, play it safe, zero-risk version is, I hope to be senior.
It's a grammatical platitude. It means absolutely nothing to the interviewer. It is instantly forgettable.
That's boring.
The better version, drawn directly from our case study sources, is, I want to be deep inside a genuinely hard challenge. The kind that keeps me up at night in the good way.
In the good way. That tiny little qualifier at the end is everything.
It truly is. Adding in the good way fundamentally humanizes the response. It shows a sophisticated understanding of the nuance of workplace psychology. It acknowledges that there is bad, toxic stress, but there's also passionate, engaging flow state stress.
It shows you know yourself.
It expresses genuine ambition, grit, and a specific personality, rather than a safe, forgettable, grammatically perfect platitude produced by a panicked spell checker.
And finally, scenario 4. Stalling for time. You get hit with a deeply complex, tough question that you weren't expecting. The basic version is, give me a minute, followed by a deeply awkward, tense silence where everyone just stares at each other's webcams.
Which, as we discussed, just feeds the biological cascade and spikes the heart rate.
Right.
The better version utilizes our 3-second permission toolkit perfectly. Give me one moment on that, but I want to make sure what I say actually reflects what I think.
That is such an unbelievable power move.
It is the ultimate professional stall. You are explicitly complimenting the depth and complexity of their question, making them feel smart, while smoothly and confidently buying your own amygdala the critical processing time it needs to calm down. You control the silence rather than letting the silence control you.
When we look at all four of these scenarios together, a really clear overarching pattern emerges.
Yeah.
The basic versions are all defensive postures.
Very defensive.
They attempt to minimize social risk by saying less, hedging, pre-apologizing, or shrinking. But the better versions accept a slight social risk in order to be genuine, specific, and memorable. They prioritize human connection, clarity, and competence over playing it safe.
Which brings us full circle, back to Raphael's story.
Yes, because there's a second half to his story in the sources. After he learned all this, after he understood the biology of the amygdala hijack, after he built his clarity anchors, after he practiced the 3-second permission to pause, and after he did the agonizing video recordings, he got another interview.
He tried again.
This time at a different, equally prestigious tech company, and as fate would have it, they asked him the exact same opening question. Tell me a little about yourself.
And this time, he was ready. He didn't give the robotic, "I am a software engineer" line. He actively used the framework.
How did it go?
When the spotlight hit and the pressure spiked, he deliberately paused. He narrated it. He consciously dropped the internal monitor, prioritizing communication over perfection. And he spoke his actual truth.
You didn't hold back.
He talked passionately about wanting to close the specific gap between complex back-end engineering and simple, intuitive user experience. And he finished his answer by saying, "This isn't really a job application for me. It's a conversation I've been looking forward to."
He absolutely crushed it. He was textured, he was real, and he got the job. But here is the most profound, beautiful realization of this entire deep dive. When you analyze his second successful interview, none of his new answer involved new English.
Exactly.
He didn't take an advanced grammar masterclass between the two interviews. He didn't memorize a new dictionary. It was the exact same vocabulary, the exact same linguistic raw material he already possessed in the first interview.
Nothing changed linguistically.
The only difference was that he removed the biological wall of the freeze. He stopped fighting his English and started managing his nervous system.
He stopped treating the freeze as a permanent intellectual deficiency and started treating it as a temporary physiological threat response that he had the tools to regulate.
So, if you are listening to this right now and you have ever felt that agonizing, humiliating blankness in a meeting or a conversation, if you have ever felt like a rough draft of yourself, I want you to remember this core truth.
It's an important one.
The freeze is a biological reaction. It is a misguided survival mechanism. It is absolutely not a reflection of your intelligence, your competence, or your worth. The freeze survives in silence. It cannot survive sound.
So start speaking sooner.
Start speaking sooner than feels safe. Trust your gut. You already possess the intelligence, the humor, and the unique perspective that the world needs. Your goal is no longer achieving some mythic standard of perfect English. Your goal is simply clearing the biological path for the beautiful, effective English you already have inside you.
I'd like to leave you with one final, slightly provocative concept to mull over as we close. Think deeply about the concept of your own identity. If our personality, our humor, and our worldview are primarily expressed through language, who are you when you finally drop that internal monitor? Are you simply taking your native language self and translating it perfectly? Or does speaking confidently, openly, and bravely in a second language actually birth a slightly different, equally authentic new version of who you are? A version that is shaped by the journey of learning the language itself. Next time you speak, don't try to mimic a native speaker. Try to meet that new version of yourself.
That is a brilliant, beautiful thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this massive deep dive today. Your voice matters, your perspective is incredibly valuable, and the world needs to hear it clearly. Drop the monitor, trust yourself, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.